Chapter 4, Introducing the Disciplines. I chose to create this slideshow in order to help you break down a long and frankly jargon-packed chapter that will be useful in setting the stage for your upcoming research for this course. Categories of disciplines. By now, you have likely recognized that the university offers a wide range of disciplinary perspectives for students to potentially navigate and employ in their studies. These disciplines fall into certain categories, although in some cases one discipline might be located in different categories depending on how the university has decided to place it. For example, a history department might be part of a college of humanities, as seen in Chapter 4, or it might be part of a college of social sciences. However, this does not necessarily impact how the work of historians is carried out, since, as our discussion today will show, each discipline has determined its own modes and methods for conducting and presenting research. As you look at this list of categories and disciplines before we move to the next slide, take a moment to consider where your chosen thematic areas of integrative study fall. Elements of disciplinary perspective. In the chapter, Repko shows us how each discipline includes elements of disciplinary perspective, the basic properties involved in research in that field. First, there is phenomena, those things which are observed and studied. Then there is epistemology, the way knowledge in that field is constructed. Each field also carries certain assumptions, or commonly held beliefs, concepts, which are named elements in that field of study, theories, which are philosophical or scientific beliefs, and finally methods, the research practices used to test and develop knowledge. The following slides will detail each of these elements. Disciplinary phenomena. All disciplines, by their very nature, have phenomena that is available for study or employment in the research process. Whether it be the taxonomies used by scientists, the behaviors studied by psychologists, or the fiction studied by literary scholars in the humanities. As you consider the phenomena studied in the natural and social sciences, as well as the humanities, note how familiar you already are with the sample disciplines provided in the slide. Although some of the language used in this chapter may be new to you, take comfort in the fact that your high school and college learning, so far, has prepared you well for the research you will undertake in this course. Zostak's classification of phenomena. Repko cites R. Zostak's classification of phenomena as another means for understanding how phenomena can be characterized in levels from general to specific. This approach is particularly useful to you as you work on narrowing your interdisciplinary research questions and decide on the phenomena you will study and the methods you will choose. Carefully review this slide to become acquainted with how disciplinary research is a process of moving from general to specific. Epistemology. Epistemology is how someone in a field can actually know something to be true. Therefore, it includes the methods used to get at what is being studied and whether the methods are effective in validating theories of reality. For example, scientists use control and experimental samples to determine through laboratory and sometimes human testing whether a medicine does what they believe it can do. Obviously, when you work in the social sciences and humanities, the ability to validate one's findings becomes more complex and even variable. Epistemologies. Examples. As you review the categories, disciplines, and epistemologies on this slide, once again consider where your research interests fall, now focusing on how that field of study creates knowledge and the attendant research methods that may be used to answer research questions. Assumptions. Since most research disciplines have existed for a very long time, they already provide researchers certain assumptions that can assist in guiding their work. As you review the assumptions related to the natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities on this slide, you might think several are just common sense. Everyone knows knowledge is superior to ignorance, right? The key here is to consider how these assumptions play out in an academic sense. Because if we generalize too much, we might run into some conflicts. To take the example about knowledge and ignorance, isn't it sometimes said that ignorance is bliss? Such a concept, if taken too literally, can be counterproductive. We all want to be happy, but who wants to remain ignorant? Again, the purpose here is to see how certain assumptions can be made within the context of a particular discipline or set of disciplines, not just as common sense. Theory. Your textbook defines theory as the act of looking at or viewing, contemplating, or speculating, as well as a result, an explanation about some aspect of the natural or human world, how it works, and why specific facts are related and supported by data and research. As such, theory might be seen more so as the byproduct of research rather than, as we sometimes use the term informally, just something we assume or wonder about. In the academy, a theory is something that has been tested to determine its applicability or universality. Repko stresses the practical reasons for understanding theory, with the first being that every field is guided by and produces theory. Second, these theories can lead to even more research questions. For example, if theory holds that crimes in the U.S. are more often committed by people who have not completed a high school education, then we might pursue whether this is true in other countries or whether it applies to both genders. Theories can be scientific or philosophical, depending on the discipline in which a theory is grounded. A scientific theory might provide an explanation for how plant or animal life changes over time, whereas a philosophical theory might delve into the ways language can be persuasive in different ways for different audiences. Finally, Repko provides perhaps the broadest and most practical reason for understanding theory, that it helps to explain the things, the phenomena we observe around us in those moments when we can pause and study everyday life. Methods. When most people think of research, they envision scientists in a laboratory looking through a microscope or mixing chemicals. And this is, indeed, research that is conducted daily all over the world. However, research also includes, among other things, surveying and or interviewing people about their opinions, analyzing numerical data, and observing objects, people, and phenomena. And although fancy words like positivism, interpretivism, and postmodernism may be fun to say, for your purposes in this course and beyond, having a grasp on the differences between qualitative and quantitative research will suffice. For these are the types that are most commonly carried out by researchers in the areas of study you are integrating. Questions to ask yourself. Now that you've been provided this overview of the disciplines and their attendant theories and methods, consider the following. Which disciplines do you feel comfortable exploring? What are 2 or 3 research questions that require more than one discipline to answer? What research methods have you used, and which ones would you like to learn how to use? Your answers to these questions will help you as you progress towards developing a research question or two for your final project in this course.